This is Raw and Real Entrepreneurship, the show that brings the no-nonsense truth of what is required to start, grow, and scale your business. I am your host, Susan Sly. Well, what is up, Raw and Real Entrepreneurs, wherever you are in the world? I hope you are having an incredible day. And I want to give a shout out to Isle of Man, who is in our top 10 listening audience. And I've never been to the Isle of Man, but I would like to go. I've been to other parts of the world, but shouts out to you if you're from the Isle of Man. So thank you for listening. And of course, we still have our crowd favorites of the UK and Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and of course, the USA rounding out in that top 10. But Isle of Man, shouts out to you. Anyway, I want to share with you today an amazing founder, someone who is resilient, someone who is adaptable, and someone who is wise. And in my research on this individual, and you know that we reject 90% of applicants for the show, that this person, it was not only impressive, it wasn't just impressive by his 25 years of experience in software development, but it was impressive because of his humility and his tenacity. And in addition to all of his life experience, he has always been involved in managing commercial and residential buildings. We've had a lot of real estate developers on the show as part of a family business. He is very experienced in terms of entrepreneurship and starting businesses and scaling businesses. And like many entrepreneurs you hear on the show, there was a problem that he wanted to fix. And 5 years ago, he got very frustrated with all of the inefficient communication in relation to managing buildings, projects, and teams. And good Lord, if you've ever done a construction project, I think you can all relate to that. There were Post-it notes. I am a fan of Post-it notes as an MIT grad, but anyway, there were Post-it notes, phone calls, voicemails, text messages, WhatsApps, emails. Oh my gosh, it's just giving me a headache reading that, flying all over the place. And it was impossible to manage and keep track of everything. He wanted to create a simple photo-based solution, as simple as WhatsApp, that had the flexibility to manage everything. And he looked into the market for that solution and didn't find anything that was simple enough or, straightforward that was usable. Everything seemed so complex, too inflexible, and too time-consuming. So with that, he decided to build a company called Snapfix. And Snapfix is a very simple, modern, and I'm going to use the word elegant solution, and with an obsessive focus on that simplicity. So my guest today is Paul McCarthy. He's the founder and CEO of Snapfix. Paul, thank you for being on Raw and Real Entrepreneurship.
Susan, that is hands down the best and most welcoming introduction I have ever received. So I want to thank you for that, and I'm absolutely thrilled to bits to be here today.
Well, you are as kind as you are wise, Paul. So I was creeping Snapfix and very enthralled with the company. And I know for our listeners, they might not have heard of Snapfix. So let's start there. What is Snapfix? And what, we talked about the problem that it's solving, but for people who perhaps are not in construction, if you could share, what is the problem you're solving and how you're solving it?
Sure thing, Susan. Well, in a nutshell, Snapfix is the simplest maintenance platform in the world. And it works extremely well in all buildings, all types of infrastructure, and all types of equipment. Many of the solutions to date have been either paper-based or, as you mentioned very eloquently earlier, Post-it notes and WhatsApp and the like, or very complex systems. And what I set out to build was the simplest solution using the power of the smartphone and the power of the camera. I heard recently a really great quote that the camera is the new keyboard. And I think we're communicating so effectively now with photos. And we introduced the concept of red, yellow, green traffic lights for collaboration. Red means something needs to be done, yellow in progress, green is complete. So it's the combination of photos for communication, traffic lights for collaboration has created essentially this new language for multilingual teams to be able to work very efficiently together.
And it's genius when you think about that, because from a UI, a user interface, the red, yellow, green, regardless of where one is in the world, even in my many times in Cambodia, red means stop, yellow means go faster. No, yellow does mean caution, but and then green, of course, go. And to have that kind of that ability of interpretation and make it so simple. So you have this problem. Let's go back in time. You have this problem and you're thinking, oh, if only there was. And a lot of people think, oh, if only there was a solution for this, but they don't take action to actually go about solving it. So what were those first steps you took in saying, maybe I'm going to create this?
So the first steps were, Susan, when I was living in that problem, besides the post-it notes and people tapping me on the shoulder and the emails and everything else, the common denominator was WhatsApp. Everybody was using photos for communicating, and they were using messaging as well between each other. In the environment I was in, which I was sitting in the middle of tenants in a building and contractors, tenants reporting issues, contractors resolving them, and I was sitting in the middle allocating work orders and work between them. I spent my life scrolling up and down through WhatsApp, and I wasn't sure what was new, what was in progress, what was done. And it wasn't until I was walking down the street one day that I literally looked at a traffic light at the junction near my home, and that was kind of the eureka moment. And I said, that's it. The traffic light is the universal symbol for teamwork. It doesn't get any simpler. And we took the traffic light and we turned it horizontally, and we said, okay, if it's in red, it's something needs to be done. Yellow, it's in progress. Green, completed. And I was obsessed to keep it that simple, if at all possible. And I set out by introducing it to a number of different sectors: facilities management, construction companies, hotels and the like. And hotels really gravitated to us. They have a large audience of multilingual staff. They operate 24/7, and they demand the highest quality. And when they embraced it, I knew we were onto a good thing.
How did you build the beta version?
I kissed a lot of frogs. I met about 10 companies beforehand, and I was trying to explain to people what I was trying to do. And then I had the great fortune to be introduced to my now CTO and co-founder, Cathal Greeny. And when I was explaining to him what I wanted to build, which was a WhatsApp for getting things done, or a WhatsApp for task management, I basically started explaining it to him, and he nearly took the sentence out of my mouth and just went with it. And he said, I would love to be building this with you, and the rest is history. So I think finding a co-founder is so important in the very, very early days, somebody that you can trust implicitly and share the load. And Cathal is really, really good on the technology side, and I would be focusing on the business and the raising investment and the sales and marketing side. And it's just been a really match made in heaven.
So kissing frogs. And that, so for someone listening and thinking, I want to start a tech company, let's talk about what kissing frogs really means. How do you know, Paul, that whether it's an individual or a company is not the right one to build your initial piece of technology?
Yeah, the last thing Cathal and I talked about was the cost of building the prototype. What everybody else, the other 9 out of 10 or 10 companies I met, they were looking at revenue for that month. And Cathal was looking out at the next 20, 25 years. And I was looking out at the next 20, 25 years. So there was a great alignment of vision between the two of us. Everybody else was just so far below that bar. When I met Cathal, it was just a standout conversation.
So that it's that knowing, that vision, and to your point, a lot of the DevOps companies out there, they're like, okay, it's like anything, whether it's just like, we want to bring in money now, let's start the project, and we're talking just to get a prototype could be hundreds of thousands of dollars even, and you're starting behind the finish line before you're even starting the race, so to speak. If you could go back in time with that initial prototype, knowing what you know now, is there something you would have changed?
Yes, I initially designed the initial prototype and then slept on it, for a day or two, and I cut it in half. I said, we don't need this, we don't need that, we don't need the other. I did a lot of research on how Steve Jobs and Johnny Ive designed the iPod and the iPhone, and they had a relentless focus on eliminating everything that wasn't absolutely necessary. And I set myself down that path of every click counts, every keystroke counts, just everything. I wanted to make an absolutely pure, minimalistic, universal, simplistic solution. And if I had it all over again, I would have cut it in half again. So what we do now is we say no to most features, and then we really, really have to put a strong argument for any new feature to come into Snapfix. And one of the tasks that our product manager, who's a wonderful product manager, is tasked with doing is removing 10% of Snapfix every year. Just keep taking out the features that we may have put in that are not being utilized or being really, really poorly utilized. And then we don't carry forward any technical debt, or we're not maintaining software that's not providing the most value to our customers.
So what I'm hearing is each feature has to advocate for itself and has to be a strong advocate. And how do you research which features get to stay? Because there's this concept in technology where there are a lot of developers who fall in love with their product, but they're never hearing the voice of the customer. Conversely, there are the sales teams that hear the voice of the customer, but they're perhaps not conveying back to the product team why that feature is important or why that needs to be put on the roadmap and perhaps ahead of other features. So how do these features get advocated for? And do you weight them? Is there an Excel sheet for them?
There's more than an Excel sheet. It is the eternal debate within Snapfix, and the nice thing about some of the roles in Snapfix is we give people autonomy in their roles, and people fight, really, really strongly for some features and put very, very passionate arguments. And we like to be customer led. That's the first thing we like to do. We rolled Snapfix out to a large audience of customers, and they gave us feedback right away. And we were very, very open, and we embraced all feedback. And we wanted them to tell us what you don't like, tell us what you really like, tell us where we can be better. And we're always that open. We never, ever, ever are offended by any feedback. We embrace it all the time. So I think we've been very, very fortunate with our early adopter customers. They were very open to sharing that information with us. They had all tried complex systems, and they had already given up and gone back to WhatsApp and Excel, but they wanted something a little bit better than Excel. Excel is a wonderful tool for chat. It just wasn't built for purpose for task management. And then subsequent to that, always being open to customers, we just have two golden rules. It has to be the simplest version possible. Nobody can design anything simpler. So we take plenty of time to make sure we design this simplest version. And it has to be universal. That's it.
Simple and universal.
Simple and universal.
So along the journey, have you or anyone on the team, not to throw anyone on the bus, but have you ever had perhaps a feature or an idea for Snapfix and you thought, this is it, this is going to be incredible, and it wasn't?
Yeah. When COVID hit, of course, we had to pivot. We had originally focused on hotels, and then we went wide to the wider facilities management market. But at the same time, too, we decided to see where we could really, really help our hotel customers with the problem of COVID, which had to do with a lot of high intensity cleaning. So you were cleaning handrails, doorknobs, light switches, all of this stuff periodically during the day. And you wanted to make cleaning very visible to your guests at the time. You wanted them to make sure that they felt safe in that environment. So cleaning became a theater. It became very, very public in many of our customers. So we designed what we call the Snapboard, where they could publish the cleaning schedule on a TV screen. And of course, COVID kind of ebbed and flowed quite quickly, but the need for it kind of went away quite quickly. So we have demoted it completely in the product. It's still, the feature itself as a dashboard is still valuable, but the purpose for being strictly COVID is no longer applicable.
I love that you share that, because so many founders who are still have companies that are going, COVID was a cause for a pivot, and a pivot isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can be something that's very healthy. It tests your team. How agile are they? And to your point, just because a feature was created or a UI was created, it doesn't mean it can't be repurposed for something different. And even at
Correct.
Radius, with our technology we were using for COVID screening in hospitals, that same technology, we use that for our VizTel product for doing retail analytics. So there are different use cases, and I think that's powerful. And I love that you mentioned Steve Jobs, because Steve always had features in the vault, and sometimes they'd release something, it wasn't right that time, and then they would release it 5 years later, and it came down to timing. Do you think that where Snapfix is now is luck, timing, work ethic, or is it something else?
Work ethic definitely comes to the fore, because I guess what I'm doing with Snapfix, or when I initiated Snapfix, I was bringing 25 years of property and real estate management experience and 25 years of computer software experience. So bringing a solution to life on that intersection, I think has a lot of value, and there was a lot of experience at that point in time. I joke with everybody that I had black hair before I started Snapfix, and having a relentless focus on simplicity is really hard. You have to say no. On my office desk, I have a big sign that just says no. So we start with no, and that's a hard position to start with. And I guess one of the analogies I share is Microsoft Word. Now, Microsoft is a wonderful, wonderful company and all the rest of it, but everybody pays for 100% of Microsoft Word and uses 1% of it. Well, we only want to focus on the 1%, and most of our customers will use most of Snapfix at all times.
Well, and Microsoft, to your point, is a wonderful company, and some of their software is very much designed by developers, and I'm wondering about the voice of the customer. And that's why Google was able to make such inroads and was so smart, because even my children, Paul, they Google Sheets, Google Docs, everything. Absolutely. And it was all cloud-based. And so people do want the simplicity. And the reason I asked you that, it's a bit of a leading question. So over the weekend, I was reading in the Wall Street Journal about motivation and drive when it comes to work by generation. So Gen Z or Gen Z, I'm originally from Canada, so I'll say the Z, the millennials, Gen X, and which is where I am, and I would guess you are as well, and then boomers. And what it illustrated is that drive, that work ethic, that I guess that whole raison d'etre for like creating work, that it's diminishing by generation. And that's why I asked you if it was about work ethic or luck or timing, because to be an entrepreneur, it definitely requires a certain work ethic. And what are your thoughts on that?
I would agree to a point, I think. I grew up on a farm. I was one of 12 children on a farm, and so there's 14 of us in the house. And a farm is a business like any other business, but it runs 365 days a year, and there's a lot of teamwork, and there's a lot of responsibility, and a very strong work ethic from day one. So I definitely have that foundation and brought it into my life. But I do believe that necessity is the mother of invention, and I think the future generations will step up every single time. I'm very optimistic by nature. I do see articles where people are saying that, oh, my grandfather, they worked so hard, and my father, they worked a little less hard, and me a little less hard, and it's getting less. I'm not sure I buy it completely. I think the kids the new generation will automate more. They'll think differently, and they'll be working in sectors and in technologies that our parents or grandparents couldn't even imagine. And they'll be in roles that didn't exist 20, 30 years ago. So I'm all for the next generation. we're leaving them with a number of challenges with climate change and pollution and energy prices and everything like that. But I'm confident that, again, necessity is the mother of invention, and they will invent the solutions of the future.
And they'll work smarter.
Yeah.
Right. And the entrepreneurial burnout in our generation is so high, the divorce rate, the heart attacks, and that's why it's raw and real entrepreneurship. And I'm a big fan of, and I think everyone should be listening to so many different shows and getting the inputs, not just this show, but Built to Sell is one of my favorites. And there was an interview where they're talking about, oh, it's almost common to have a divorce just as you're selling your company. And it's just, that shouldn't be the case. And to your point, as a mother of Gen Zers myself, that they do work smarter. And they do have a different sense of it. And it doesn't, the 80-hour work week, I don't know if there's a 4-hour work week when you're building a business, like Tim Ferriss said, but there's definitely, it doesn't have to be 80 hours. Let me ask you this. You have raised $5 million in your $5 million in your pre-Series A round. And how did you go about raising that money? Because everyone has different ways that they do it. And I'm so curious.
Well, we did it, Susan, in 3 tranches. So we raised some essentially pre-seed money in September 19, and we got the gang together. We pulled the team together and started upgrading the prototype so that it was ready for paying customers. And then a year later, we raised again, and we went out to angels at the same time. We were also supported by Enterprise Ireland, which is Ireland's entrepreneur-backed fund, and they were really, really, really good to bring on board very early, because they insisted on focus. They said, given our experience with investing in hundreds and hundreds of startups, we think it's very, very important to focus. So on day one, they encouraged us. We were going to focus anyway, but it was great to have an experienced team tell us, you really need to focus. And that's why we focused on hotels initially. Now, I got to tell you, 6 months later, when COVID hit and all the hotels shut down, I had a big question mark over my head for about 24 hours. But it turned out focus is definitely the right thing to do at all times. And then we had the very, very good fortune to meet Paul and Rick from Cedar Grove from Florida a year ago, and that's our third step in the investment road. And we're absolutely thrilled to bits to be involved with such long-term thinkers, very aligned thinkers. I think what's really, really important raising investment is also a marriage, because when you're planning something for the long term, you want to make sure that relationship is rock solid. For the long term, and we're very, very thankful to have chosen some amazingly experienced, shared vision, and kind and considerate and supportive investors.
Paul, I've not heard it compared to a marriage. And so I find that's interesting. And for someone who's listening, who perhaps we have many people who are just on that cusp of beginning to raise money. Did you have any investors you said no to because they weren't people you would want to get married to? Or was it that you just really had the right group of people? Because I think so often there's this concept when it comes to raising money, and at Radius, we've done a few rounds as well, all friends and family, where it has to be hard. And I have a Vanguard opinion that it doesn't, because it comes down to relationships. But I definitely want to hear your take on this.
You're absolutely right. It's down to relationships. Before meeting Paul and Rick from Cedar Grove, I probably met maybe 100 companies, most 99% of them on Zoom, of course, and it just clicked when we met. And that's I can't say anymore. The decision was extremely quick on their side. I laid out my vision. They laid out what they were thinking for the long term, and I think the alignment of long term was absolutely key. We didn't want to attract any investor who wanted to cash out in 2 years' time or 4 years' time or anything like that. We're building a global multi-billion-dollar company here, and that's going to take time, because when you look at the Googles or the Apples of the world, their increase in value came after 15 years, let's say. So we're thinking in those terms. We're thinking, when we talk to our customers and present Snapfix to them, we're not talking about software for this year or next year. We're talking about software solutions for them for the years and decades to come.
Mm. I love that. That's the long-term vision, and the right founder. It's, to your point, this marriage. The right founder is definitely. I have so many conversations because we haven't done an A round yet. We're at revenue, so we've not needed to. And so I have a lot of conversations, it's like speed dating. It's like 15 minutes, right? And you just know if there's some synchronicity or if there's not. And Paul, as someone's listening, they'll say, well, okay, he had all these conversations, he found these right investors. And can you talk about perhaps, and please, obviously, I know you wouldn't because you're a gentleman and professional, you don't have to say who, but could you give an example of perhaps a conversation that didn't go well when you were talking to some of these potential investors?
I can't think of anyone that didn't particularly go well. Some of the VCs have certain criteria. They want 5 million ARR or 2 million ARR, and so we were too early for them, and that was all fine. There was actually none that was, because the other thing, we're very open and transparent and honest, and we put everything on the table, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So there was never any conflict, or if we didn't match their criteria, we said, thank you so much for meeting with us. Let's not have a 40-minute call. Let's give each other 30 minutes back now, and we will finish the call after 10 minutes. And it was just a very open and honest and sharing conversation. Conversations that we probably wouldn't have progressed would have been some interest in taking a controlling interest. So investing X amount now for a controlling interest, or an outright acquisition conversation. So we weren't interested in those conversations, but they were quite open and honest exits to those conversations. And maybe we'll pick up some of those conversations down the road, but they weren't for that point in time. We were very, very specific. We had a deck laid out as to the ideal partner where we're looking for. And I guess when you talk to enough people and you meet the right people, you know it pretty quickly.
Oh, I want to pick up on that, Paul. You were very clear on the ideal people you were looking for. And that is something that I want you to expand upon, because for founders who are listening, oftentimes it's like, I just need money. And I've heard, you need money. A startup needs money. People need oxygen or whatever the case is. And I've watched people go out and raise money and give away massive parts of their company just to get that early stage money. But you held firm. So what were those criteria that you were looking for specifically?
I think one of the key ones, Susan, was the focus on the long term. So we wanted an investor and investors who were going to be with us on this long journey. There is no book. I say it quite often. There is no book in the library for what we're trying to build here. No one's ever built the maintenance platform for the world. And when Elon Musk takes us all to Mars, then it'll be the maintenance platform for Mars as well. But that's a little bit down the road. I think that the most important thing is the relationship. I went for a 1 hour meeting with Paul from Cedar Grove, and we left company 4 hours later. And I texted my wife to say, I'm not going to make the flight. I'd flown to London. He happened to be in London. And it was just, we got on so well, and we just kept talking about the infinite possibilities and the total addressable market of this solution. But I would always preface that with, this is Mount Everest, we're climbing. This is an unbelievably difficult challenge to get people to change their work habits, to use a camera and a phone instead of paperwork for the most part, or Excel or WhatsApp. So this is not going to be easy. And again, it's all around being honest and upfront about how difficult this is going to be. and then you just meet like-minded people who agree with you and share their insights, and you're having just a wonderful conversation. And I really do believe that it is like a marriage. When you're in it for the long haul, it is a marriage. It really is. And we're so fortunate that Paul and Rick are very, very supportive. I can call them up anytime and ask for a little bit of advice or mentorship or anything. It's a really nice relationship, and we will be looking for another partner down the line, possibly somebody with distribution. It could be somebody with 50,000 buildings or 1,000 buildings or whatever, who may invest in Snapfix, but also bring Snapfix into a large audience of properties. And we'll want to make sure that that's the right partner as well. And it's worth putting the investment into the time to choose the right person, because if you get the wrong person, it just must be a disaster. And I've heard of many disasters, and life is too short.
You and I both. Yes, exactly. And I was writing down the criteria because I think it's so beautiful. And you mentioned again a marriage, right? And this focus on long-term, the relationships. I love what you said, that you were honest and upfront about the challenges. You're climbing a mountain, and it's what I'm hearing in that is that the investors were very receptive to the fact that this wasn't just a PE play where they were just going to come in and invest some money, resell the company or resell their stake in it, but it was just going to be that they celebrated the fact that you were honest about how tough it was going to be. And I think that's huge. I was in a meeting, I won't say with which company, but a massive multinational hardware company, and one of their SVPs asked me a question, and he said, in one sentence, what's your value proposition? And I said, candidly, I don't have an answer for that yet. It's something we're still working on in one sentence, because we can do so many things with our AI. And there was silence in this meeting. There were about, 8 people in the meeting. Just like suddenly you could hear a pin drop. And then he paused and he said, wow, your honesty is refreshing, because every other person I've asked that, every other founder I've asked that, they're always trying to sell me or come up with something perfect. And I said, I don't know if it's because I'm 50 or I've been an entrepreneur for decades, but I'm past the point of trying to be anything other than what we are, right?
And that's experience, and that's a wonderful story. And I think that's experience shining through to say, I don't know everything. I've yet to meet somebody who can predict the future, and we're all doing our very, very best. But I did hear one investor once say that they look for a massive opportunity, an unsolved problem, and a differentiated solution. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the investors that we didn't progress with. But those 3 parts of that phrase just resonated with me so much, because I just went tick, tick, tick. Snapfix ticks all of those. We have a massive market, massive addressable market, an unsolved problem globally, and we have a differentiated solution. Nobody can build a simpler maintenance solution than Snapfix. If they do, Susan, I'll be gone. You'll never see me again.
Well, I hope that's not the case for a variety of reasons.
If somebody comes out with the combination of photos with 2 traffic lights, I'm done. We're finished.
Well,
I'm joking, of course.
I'm thinking, when you said the traffic lights, now, of course, I'm thinking about different places I've traveled in the world, whether it's Malawi or going back to Cambodia, Phnom Penh, or wherever. And really, there might as well just be one traffic light, because people just go like mad unless it's red. So,
that's it.
So maybe, I don't know what to tell you. It's a one traffic light analogy. I think that what you have created is genius. I want to ask you, if you could go back in the last 5 years, before we started the show, we talked about a wall kicking moment where you were humbled, where you had to take a good hard look in the mirror. And so often with entrepreneurship, and we have 12-year-olds who listen to the show, we have 80-year-olds who listen to the show. So often it's easy to, to look in the media and look at this, I guess, the success stories. And there's a saying, Paul, and I'm sure you've heard it, that I first heard the Natalie Cole, the daughter of Nat King Cole, say, "You only see the glory, you don't know the story." So looking back at the last 5 years, when you and I were discussing about when COVID hit and the company was focused on hotels, and people would look at you, if they're not able to see you, they would know, very, very elegant, put together gentleman who clearly knows what he's doing, who looks like, he's in the midst of chaos and he's the one keeping it all together, the eye of the storm. But that wasn't the case. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, when COVID hit, we were seeing all the images coming in from these very unfortunate Italian towns and everything like that. And it was very, very obvious to me that this thing was not going to end well or end very, very soon. So I actually pulled all of the team together, and right as I started talking about what I thought was going to happen, I got very, very upset in the meeting. And actually, my CFO actually had to take over speaking for me, because I put my heart and soul so much into Snapfix. We had hired an amazing team, a very, very dedicated team. And we had bet the farm on hotels, which, of course, on March 15, 2020, everything was looking pretty bleak at that point in time. But thankfully, we navigated our way through it. But at that moment, I guess I was so upset that I did write down in front of the team. But we gave ourselves 24 hours to kind of, dust ourselves off and say, okay, hang on a second. The world is going to continue after this. It's not all over. We just need to trim down, stay lean, and offer more value to our customers, and we'll be just fine. But I think allowing yourself to feel that is totally okay. It's when you're running through walls and you're putting your heart and soul into it. And I was probably erring on the 80-hour week rather than the 4-hour work week at that point in time. And then this guillotine comes down, and you're stopped in your tracks. I guess we just needed 24 hours to pause, reflect, and then take it a different direction, which was speaking to all types of office buildings, apartment buildings, engineering companies, construction companies, which was great. It wasn't on our plan. We planned to stick with hotels for maybe another 12 months. It just accelerated our plans.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for sharing that story. There's going back to the generational piece. One of the things that younger generations want is for their leaders to have vulnerability. I think it's a different expectation than perhaps when you and I were coming up, and what we expected of our leaders to be like Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah, they have to have a facade. Yeah, there's no facade here. It's everything is quite open. We have we're a very open company, and we know that people have lives and families, and they've got issues, and COVID this and COVID's still going on. So we just and when you're thinking long term, you don't get as upset anymore. Well, I don't get upset anymore when things go wrong. In fact, if I have a 10-point plan, one of the points will be something is going to go badly wrong, and then you expect it, you plan for it, and when it happens, you might know where it was going to come from. But there's point 7, something is going to go horribly wrong.
Well, and that comes definitely from wisdom. And so a couple of final questions, rapid fire, if you're good for rapid fire. What books, resources should anyone who's, starting a business, growing a business, scaling a business, what are some of the books and resources that have really helped you?
I would be a big fan of Y Combinator and paulgraham.com. He and Y Combinator have funded, over 2,000 startups. So the wealth of knowledge that they have in relation to what works and the common problems of what doesn't work. So he starts off by saying, build something the customers want, Choose your co-founder unbelievably carefully. Again, it's back to the marriage concept, and get the minimum viable product in front of a customer very, very quickly and get their real feedback. That would be his top three. In relation to everything after that, then is about sales. If you have an amazing product, everything is about sales. And there's a great book. It's actually on my desk. It's called Fanatical Prospecting by Jed Blount. And it delivers a couple of very straight messages around sales is hard. Expect it to be hard. You own your own pipeline. And if you don't prospect today, you won't have a pipeline in 6-8 weeks' time. And by the way, it's really hard. So he keeps repeating some very, very, a lot of home truths, and there's no silver bullet. It's you've got to work through it every single day, and it's one customer at a time, and one customer will lead to two, and two will lead to four, and four will lead to eight, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's amazing how people just don't grind it out like that, and they expect customers to flow in because they've got this magical product. Well, it doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't. Oh my gosh. Right? And one of the best things I heard in sales probably 20 years ago was you have to have more leads than you have time. And yes. A full diary leads to a full bank account. So when my diary is full and it has, the list of potential customers, that is a good week. And when it's empty, it's no one to blame except myself, and look in the mirror and say, how do we do better? Right. And especially as we're growing out the team, and it's the same thing. It's finding, as you said, those right people, that right team, and they know that it is going to be hard, but having fun with it. How can you shorten the journey? Right. Just one of the questions I always ask for Radius is, how can we simplify the sales process? So if it's 10 steps, can we get it to 6? If it's 6, correct, can we get it to 3? And then and make it simple and elegant. Now I'm going to borrow the traffic lights. So I like that one a lot.
There you go. There you go. And one more resource that I'd like to share is the Founders Podcast. So this is a podcast where this gentleman, he reads all of the autobiographies and biographies of famous founders, and you listen to their stories, and some of them are quite brutal and difficult and challenging, and nearly going out of business, and 10,000 prototypes and all the rest of this stuff. And it gives you a great sense of how challenging starting a business can be, but there's a huge number of lessons learned, an enormous number of lessons learned, and I think there's about 200 books profiled in that podcast, and it's my favorite podcast.
Oh, that's fantastic. I will check that one out, because I listen to podcasts every morning. Not my own.
The beauty of it, Susan, it saves you reading the books. You get the entire book summary in under an hour or so, and it's a wonderful way to consume a book.
Well, do you have Blinkist?
Not yet. No.
So I'm Twitter friends with one of the vice presidents at Blinkist, and he's going to be on the show. And I'm a massive fan of Blinkist, because every book, 12 to 15 minutes, and then you get the key points. And then if you want to read the whole book, then you can do, but if you don't, then you've gotten the key part of it. So you can do 5-6 books a week. It's fantastic.
Super. Yeah, I like that. Give me the short version all the time.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sponsored by Blinkist, but I should be, because I am a huge ambassador. Final question, Paul, you've raised this money, you're at revenue, you've got customers. What's next? What's next for Snapfix? Other than saying no.
We have been focused on 2 core areas in the built environment. One is we're managing existing built buildings, for example. There are 2 other stages of the construction of a building. One is the construction part of it, and which has a lot to do with punch lists and things like that. And the other is managing the valuable assets or equipment within the building. So we're rolling out next month a module to deal with the asset management side of it. And it's going to be the simplest asset management solution on the planet. So you'll be able to create your list of assets by taking photos and building them up like that. And it's very, very intuitive. And we have designs on having the simplest punch list solution in the world as well. And just like you were mentioning about removing clicks or from your sales process or steps from your sales process, we're designing Snapfix to be a one-click solution. So every time something takes 2 or 3 clicks, how can we bring that down to 1 click? And we'll be bringing voice recognition into it and voice commands into it, and trying to make it as intuitive as possible, and using machine learning and AI, which of course you're an expert in, to make the experience more fluid and more beneficial to the customers.
Well, Paul, I love that. And I'm going to be watching the company all in the coming years, because I've interviewed several founders who've taken their company to unicorn valuations, and I've interviewed founders who haven't. And you definitely have that je ne sais quoi, as they say in French, that of someone who will. And so I wish you every success.
Well, I have made the fatal mistake of falling in love with the problem, so I have to solve it now globally. So,
well, I'm excited for you to do it. So, Paul, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Susan. I really enjoyed this conversation. It was so enjoyable, and I look forward to doing it again in the not too distant future.
Because Ireland's in our top 10, I think I will have to come there.
Fantastic. Your ratings in Ireland are just going to skyrocket after this podcast.
Perfect. And we'll have a fan meetup, and you will decide where that will be, but I will definitely be there. I will accept any invitation.
You're on. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Paul, for being here. And thank you to all of our listeners all over the world. It's with a grateful heart that I get to share these incredible interviews with all of you. And if you haven't done so already, please go wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. Paul and I would love that. Thank you very much. And if I do read your review on air, as long as you email reviews@susansly.com, I will give you a $50 Amazon gift card. So there you go. So anyway, with that, thanks again, Paul, for being here. God bless everyone. Go rock your day, and I will see you in the next episode. Are you currently an employee looking to start your own business? Maybe you've been thinking about it for a while and you're just not sure where to start. Well, my course, Employee to Entrepreneur, combines my decades of experience as an entrepreneur with proven methods, techniques, and skills to help you take that leap and start your own business. This course is self-paced, learn on demand, and comes with an incredible workbook. And that will allow you to go through this content piece by piece by piece, absorb it, take action, and then go on to the next module. So check out my course on susansly.com, Employee to Entrepreneur.